In today's video, I'm going to be doing a little bit more detailed review of the Aero Hunter Kestrel saddle hunting system. If you've been following the channel or the podcast, you'll know that I've used the Aero Hunter Kestrel on 100% of my sits last fall, as opposed to a tree stand. What you may not have known is that I was also testing a prototype Kestrel, which has mesh and some different buckles as opposed to the Cordura and the quick release. So I'll go over this one a little bit later in the video. The Aero Hunter Kestrel itself, if you want more detailed history on it, you can look at the most recent podcast that we did on the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, where Bobby Boswell really gave us a deep dive into the entire background of Aero Hunter and how it evolved from their original saddle into the Aero Hunter Evolution and now into the Aero Hunter Kestrel. So I'm just going to basically go over the saddle itself in this video and kind of how I like to set it up, some of the features I like. Now, when you look online, you'll see that there's essentially two ways to buy the Kestrel. One is just the saddle itself, the other one is the entire system. So just the Kestrel will end up coming with the saddle and also the bridge that's tied in. The bridge is made out of 7/16" Samson Predator rope. It's a 6,000 pound brake strength rope, and the saddle itself is rated at 5,000 pounds. Now, if you get the whole system, not only does it come with the saddle, but it also comes with a back band, which attaches to the bridge. It comes with a tree tether, and that tether can come in either a 6-foot length or a 12-foot length. It has a friction hitch with a dual lock carabiner and a figure 8 knot tied for the eye. And the last thing that would come with that kit would be the Lyman's belt. The Lyman's belt is made out of the same rope that Samson Predator, that the tree tether, and also the bridge are made out of. And this one would tie into the saddle on one of the Lyman's loops. You can see that it has this little sleeve for abrasion resistance around the tree, and then it also has a friction hitch with the dual lock carabiner. So because the Kestrel is pretty much one continuous piece of fabric as opposed to just a mess of webbing, it's pretty obvious as to how you need to put it on. Once that waist loop is clipped on, go ahead and grab the two remaining straps and clip them into their corresponding buckles. So now the saddle's on, but you still got to deal with the ropes. Some guys like to leave ropes dangling on their side. I like to stay as streamlined as possible when I'm walking through the woods. So I'll take my bridge, I'll clip it into the other side of the harness, just like I would if I was up in the tree. And I'll take this loose rope and just go ahead and tuck it into the waist loop. With the Lyman's belt, I actually do like to go ahead and put that over my shoulders, and I'll just take the tag end and put it in a side pocket of my pants. Just again, so it's not flopping around while I'm walking through the woods. And then the last thing would just be the tree strap. And with the tree strap, I like to daisy chain that up and just clip it onto the molly system on the back side of my harness. Just like that. So now, at this point, I'm totally ready to walk into the woods. What I would typically do is I'll dress like this right from the truck, or sometimes even before I leave the house, so that literally once I get to the parking lot, I can step out of my truck, grab my backpack, grab my bow, and I'm off, while other guys are sitting there fiddling around for 5 or 10 minutes. One thing to mention regarding the buckles, these quick release buckles are crazy easy to put on. They are metal, so if you bump something else metal against them, they will make some noise. So easiest thing to do is just kind of tape them with some stealth strips or some kind of fleece, just to make those quieted down a little bit. And they are going to weigh ounces more than other styles of buckles. So when I talk about the mesh versus this Cordura one, we'll talk about some of the differences of the buckles a little bit more. So essentially with the design of the Kestrel, it's pretty straightforward. You have kind of the system of 1 3/4 inch webbing that's kind of your main saddle. So if you follow this webbing, it literally goes all the way around the entire perimeter of the saddle. And then it gets sewn down here to create your bridge attachment points. And then this entire fabric in the middle is just Cordura. You can see it's multiple pieces. So there's actually 4 pieces on this side, 4 pieces on this side, so there's a total of 8 little pieces of cordura that get sewn together to make this panel for your backside. And then you got the MOLLE webbing attachments here. The Lyman's loops are sewn right into the hips, so they're pretty easy to find and pretty unmistakable. There's really no way to confuse the Lyman's belt for anything else. So even though it's always a good idea to double check that your carabiner is indeed in your Lyman's loop, 99.9% of the time, if you feel it go in, it's actually in. If we move around to the front side, notice that this 1 3/4 inch webbing that goes off to make the bridge loops is separate from this piece that is the waist loop. And then the leg loops are also separate. Really, if you think of the saddle itself as kind of this piece underneath, then the leg loops and the waist loop are really just kind of holding the saddle onto your body and holding it in place. Really, when you're up in the tree and actually wearing it, it's just kind of this back perimeter band that's doing all the work. And if you look at the side profile, you'll see these straps right here. The intent of these straps is to make your sit more or less comfortable, just depending on how much you want this bottom band to cup up underneath you. So as is, it's pretty loose. But you can go ahead and tighten the strap, and you can see that pulls this bottom piece closer to the bridge attachment loop. And that's going to end up cupping the saddle up underneath you a little bit more. So if you feel like you're slipping out of the saddle, slipping out the bottom a little bit, sometimes lowering this a little bit on your waist and tightening up this adjustment strap a little bit can make a world of difference. Alright, so let's compare and contrast. Right here we have the mesh prototype that I've been testing and abusing for the last hunting season, and then we have the standard model that's the Cordura base that you can buy right now. So the obvious difference is one is mesh, one is Cordura. With the Cordura is a heavier fabric. It's also, when it's brand new, a little bit noisier. That noise kind of tends to wear down with time and use. But you'll notice that with the Cordura, there's 8 panels that are sewn together. Whereas with the mesh, it's just one piece of mesh. And moreover, that mesh has a 2-way stretch to it. Right? So there's actually less sewing that goes into the mesh as compared to the Cordura. Now, the mesh obviously is going to be a lot more breathable for guys in hot weather. So a lot of your southern guys, you might like the mesh a little bit more than the Cordura. At least it's going to be a little bit more breathable. In cold weather, the Cordura is a better option than the mesh, as is. That being said, Aero Hunter is coming out with some under quilts that you'll basically be able to attach onto the back side of the saddle that'll have some kind of insulation, kind of like Apex or maybe something similar, that you'll be able to attach to the back of the saddle and have some extra warmth there. Buckles. So you have 3 quick release buckles on this Cordura version, and on the mesh saddle we basically just have a feed-through strap right here. Right, so that's how that one attaches. And then these bottom loops right here, to be completely honest, I never took these apart. I would always just step through them and put the saddle on that way. But they do have the ability to be undone just like that. And again, if you're like me and you don't need the ability of these things to detach from one another, then you can go ahead and tape these things together, and then you still have your adjustability, but you don't have to worry about any kind of metal being exposed. So those are the primary differences in the design between one versus the other. Vast majority of the saddle is exactly the same. They both still have the adjustment straps here. The Lyman's loops on my prototype, they're in the exact same spot as the other saddle. However, I've been told that for the new production of these mesh ones, they're going to take these Lyman's loops and move them a little bit further forward on the hips. Also, I've been told that they're going to take these MOLLE webbing loops and they're going to sew them on a little bit looser, so it'll be a little bit easier to stick your accessories in. You can see where right now I've taken the zip ties, stuck them into the MOLLE webbing, basically just to make it a little bit easier to clip a carabiner into right here, or to hang my climbing sticks on these little plastic hooks right here. So one of the reasons I was given this mesh saddle to play around with was Bobby wanted to see how well this mesh would hold up to walking through heavy cover, briars, thorns, that type of thing. So pretty much any time I went on a hunt last year where I was walking through something that was really abrasive, I was using this saddle and not the Cordura one. And you can see when you look at these nylon adjustment straps, the exterior is visibly pretty fuzzy. Right, both of them kind of look that way. You can tell that they're definitely worn. And if you look at the back of the saddle, the mesh still looks totally new. You can't even tell this thing's really been used, despite the fact that that mesh went through all the same stuff that these adjustment straps did. And I'm not too concerned about these adjustment straps because that little bit of fuzziness on the surface, that's not really affecting their function at all. I'd be more concerned about whether or not this thing was going to hold up. And clearly, past my test, I'm totally satisfied with it. Weighing the mesh Kestrel. 1 pound, 6.1 ounces. Weighing the Cordura Kestrel with the quick release buckles. 2 pounds, 3.6 ounces. The bridge. 10.1 ounces. The Lyman's belt, 15.7 ounces. And the 6-foot tree strap, 1 pound, 1 ounce. Okay, I'm gonna run over my setup really quick. Now, there's lots of different popular platform options. I got wild edge steps set up in the tree right now. Platforms are pretty popular. They're probably my favorite overall. Ring of steps are also pretty popular and have been for decades with saddle hunting. For the purposes of this video, it doesn't really matter what you use. I'm just gonna kind of run over how I like to have my Kestrel set up on the tree for how I personally hunt. Okay, so imagine right now, I've already used my climbing method to get to hunting height. I've attached my platform. I've used the Lyman's belt to climb up on top of the platform. And I've taken the utility hook out of the pouch that I've attached to the front of my saddle. I've hooked it on the tree. It's got one hook for my bow, one hook for my pack. And now I'm ready to set up the rest of the saddle. So, go ahead and take that tree tether. Now, tether height is one of those things that's critical to comfort in the saddle, and different people are going to find that a different tether height is going to suit them better. I find that right around eye level, I can go a little bit higher or lower, somewhere between like nose and top of my head, is usually where I get the best comfort. Typically people who are hunting on ring of steps like it maybe a little bit higher. People who hunt off of platforms and use more of a leaning style rather than the sitting tend to like their tethers a little bit lower. So I'll go ahead and take the bridge out of the waist loop that it was tucked into. Go ahead and clip it into the tree strap, and then I can go ahead and loosen that Lyman's belt until all the weight is transferred onto the saddle. Again, just like when I'm walking in, when I'm done with the Lyman's belt, I usually like to put it over my shoulders and just take that tag in and tuck it into my pants pocket. So notice that number one, when I'm in this position, my knees are a little bit above 90 degrees. So my thighs, when they're touching the tree, just a little bit above parallel. That's where I find typically I have the best comfort. It's going to vary a little bit depending on what platform I'm using. Also notice that the waistband on the Kestrel is a little bit lower than the waistband of my pants. I find that if I wear the Kestrel a little bit lower, that tends to be where I get the best comfort. When I initially got the Kestrel, I always felt like I was kind of sliding out the bottom of it a little bit. So I talked to Bobby, and he's like, yeah, you just got to wear the saddle a little bit lower. And then another thing that can affect that is if you shorten your bridge up a little bit and you have your tether a little bit lower on the tree, that's also going to really alleviate that feeling of falling out of the Kestrel. So right now, where I have this set, I can sit like this comfortably all day, and I did multiple all-day sits last year, especially during the rut. If you want to, at this point, you can also attach the back band. The back band definitely does give you a little bit more comfort because it relaxes kind of your torso and your abdominal muscles a little bit. I'll be honest, I never really wear the back band all that much when I'm actually out hunting. Typically, imagine this isn't here. I'll sit here vertical like this, and this is comfortable enough for me, just having my torso completely vertical. And if I want to relax even more than that, usually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just kind of lean my head into the bridge. But there are plenty of guys who do like using this back band. And since the back band is attached with basically little mini Prusiks, you can slide that up or slide it down, just depending on whether or not you actually want the extra support of that back band. Some guys feel like this back band gets in the way of a shot. If you got a really long axle-to-axle bow, it could. But again, dropping it out of the way gives you a ton of extra movement. Sometimes people will ask, is a saddle as safe as a regular hunting harness? And really there's no way to fall out of this thing. There's plenty of videos online of guys going upside down in these things and trying to get themselves to fall out, and it's pretty tough to actually do. You have to really try even to get it to slip down a little bit. And if you look at this system, everything is tight up here with the bridge and the tether. So if you were to slip off your platform, you just kind of swing into the tree. You really can't fall. There's no shock load to recover from. So from that perspective, I personally feel like most people are going to be safer hunting from a saddle than they would out of a tree stand. For tree selection with the saddle and shot opportunity, that type of thing, if I'm hunting a very specific targeted hunt, like a bed hunt, I'm going to have the tree ideally positioned between me and where I expect that deer to come out of. Set myself up so that the trail that deer takes to get into a staging area is on my strong side. So if I see that deer just off the side of the tree starting to come out, I can just reach forward, grab my bow, draw back, and shoot as he gets to that side. There's no movement involved. That's kind of my preferred setup. If I were in a tree stand, kind of the same type of deal, I would just want to be on that side of the tree so that I could see the deer with minimal movement, grab the bow, draw back and shoot. Now when it comes to setups where there's more movement required, maybe you're hunting a funnel or some type of area where a deer could literally be on any side of the tree, that's when I feel a little bit more advantage with the saddle, because you can obviously still shoot to your strong side very easily with minimal movement. But then of course, if you want to shoot on the opposite direction of the tree, you can walk to that side, shoot, and then there's a couple different methods to shoot kind of on your weak side. The most common one that I guess I've seen would be if you were to walk around, briefly turn your back to the deer, then brace your knees against the tree, and then you can shoot that direction. And G2 Outdoors and Boudreaux Boswell both have better videos on exactly how you can get some of those different shots. So I'm not going to go too much more in depth than that. The only other thing I'll mention is that if you're using a platform, the other thing you can do is you can actually just pull yourself up so you're vertical on that platform, turn yourself 180 degrees, and then you can just shoot standing to your weak side. So that's one of the reasons that I kind of prefer that platform. I also feel it makes it a little bit easier to self-film with a platform because it takes my lower body and just kind of pulls it out from the tree just a hair more to give me a little bit more separation for that camera arm. So certainly some of the things here are saddle general, meaning any kind of saddle you use, you're going to be able to utilize some of these benefits. Some of the things I've talked about are of course Kestrel specific with the various ropes and exactly how everything's sewn together and set up. One thing I would say is that for people who are interested in saddle hunting in general, the biggest thing is just learning how to set everything up so that you can have that all-day comfort, right? Like if you were to just get this thing stock, have that tether set up way a foot above your head, it's not going to be very comfortable, and you're probably going to be like, oh, saddle hunting sucks. It's not as comfortable as everybody said it was. Similarly, if you find that you have hip pinch, that means your bridge is probably too short, or you got the saddle set up in the wrong spot in your hips. And usually having a longer bridge will give you less hip pinch, and then you can kind of shorten the bridge down by adjusting the knot on this carabiner and just shorten it to a point where you're starting to feel hip pinch, and then you can back it off like an extra like fist or something like that. There's a lot of adjustability in the system, and once you kind of figure out where your personal comfort spot is, then it becomes kind of that system where all of a sudden you can see the advantages that everybody's talking about. I would also highly recommend that when you're getting used to a system like this, you start doing practice shots out of the saddle, because when you're hunting from a tree stand, obviously you are standing vertical, you're bending at the waist to try and get that good T-form. One of the advantages of a saddle is, since you're able to get your torso angled easier out away from the tree, you're able to then shoot with better T-form. I'll just back around to the side of the tree to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So right now I have my left shin braced against the trunk of the tree. Both of my feet are touching those wild edge steps, And of course I'm held by the saddle, so my lower body is very rigid. And from this point, if I have the bow in my hand, I can lean down as far as I need to get that good upper body T-form to be able to take a shot. And you can see that also I have a ton of clearance out here, so if you're shooting even like a 70-inch trad bow, you're still able to get that shot off without any interference. Once you're ready to get back down, again, it's very easy. You pretty much just reverse the steps. So Lyman's belt goes around the trunk of the tree. You always want to make sure that you're connected somehow, whether it's the tether or the Lyman's belt. Okay, now all the weight's on the Lyman's belt. The tether and bridge are loose. And then of course on the way back out, you have the saddle set up just the way that you walked in, get back to the truck, throw your pack and your bow away, and then you're ready to drive home. I hope you guys found this video review to be helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Also, if you have questions related to saddle hunting in general, you can also check out the Saddle Hunter forum. That forum is just loaded with hundreds and hundreds of guys who are super passionate about saddle hunting, and you'll be sure to get pretty much every question you could possibly have answered there. Also, Boudreaux Boswell is very accessible. You can find him on Instagram. He's also on YouTube, and he was a big part of the design of the Kestrel. So any questions Kestrel specific or Aero Hunter specific, be sure to send them his way too. Thanks for watching.